shall we begin?
We love it. All right, I can start. You mentioned on the panel that you have voiced other versions of Freddy. How did this version of Freddy differ from those?
So this version of Freddy is really animated because, to fit the theme of Funko Fusion, everything is very cartoony and, kawaii cute. And so I would probably voice, if I were to voice the very original one, the very first one, in his original carnation, then it would probably be a little different because this guy's like a cartoon. That said, he has the base of Glamrock Freddy. He has sort of the gravel of Funtime Freddy or Moon. And he just feels kind of like a fusion of all the parts beforehand, at least taking little bits of inspiration from each of them. He doesn't actually talk, to my knowledge, in the game. It's mostly, if not all, efforts. So I couldn't really explore his speech patterns, but efforts were a lot of fun to do, and I think he comes off as something different. I hope so. I know that fans have been waiting for another original incarnation incarnation of the original. So I'm hoping to do it justice for them.
Yeah, very cool.
Cam Proctor from Big Gold Bell Media. Where do you find, I guess, the original inspiration or the voice for Freddy?
This Freddy?
Yes, this Freddy.
It's hard to say. I've been working on this voice for like almost as long as I've been voice acting for the IP, which is 8 years now. So over the years, you just try stuff. You throw spaghetti at the wall and see if it sticks. The inspiration I always come back to, other than the other incarnations of Freddy and the FNAF characters that I've played, are the original Showbiz Pizza and Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. Yeah, there's a lot to learn from them. They're so buoyant and happy and fun, and they were very unhinged back then as well. Pardon the metal pun. I forget which ones in particular, but just the energy of that I tried my best to capture. I did my best to bring that to Fredbear in Ultimate Custom Night, but the audio for the purposes of the game was distorted to you couldn't recognize it, so we won't really ever hear that, but he was kind of like a southern, deeper thing, so I would say that was sort of the prototype for what I'm feeling like Freddy Fazbear would be if it were the actual Freddy Fazbear, not in Funko. But for Funko, it's that, but cartoony. Sorry, we got there.
So of all the Freddy characters, which one would you say is closest to you?
That's tough because I'm going to get mad. People are going to get mad at me whatever I say here. I love all of them for different reasons. They're all really near and dear to me. Funtime Freddy because he was the first one and the most energetic and the one that people first fell in love with me for, and that's a special feeling. Molten Freddy because he came right after, and he was part of Ennard, which I always wanted to be. Fredbear for those reasons, to get to go back to my Chuck E. Cheese roots, but I also research a lot of Showbiz Pizza stuff as well. And then there's Sun and Moon, which I attribute, I have autism, and I tried to, right on, autistic crowd, yeah. So I do my best to try and give them attributes, positive attributes of autism. In that maybe like I don't know. I've always pictured Son having ADHD, just because he's all over the place and trying to like completely different lines of thought per millisecond. And Moon is just sort of like I always pictured him as like, I don't know, just doesn't know really how to socialize, so he just sort of does his own thing. And then Glamrock Freddy makes me feel good about myself to voice, because he's the big brother type. He's like the Optimus Prime big brother dad type. And all he wants to do is protect Gregory in the game, this little kid. And that just after like, let's see, at the time, I guess it was 3 years. It was in 2019, so yeah, it would have been 3 years by that point. So after 3 years of voicing child-killing robots, having one that protects a child was a good change of pace, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Very refreshing.
Which character was the most challenging?
Most challenge. Okay, that's a little easier. Moon's like down here. He's like Harvey Firestein if he kept smoking. He wasn't meant to scream. He was only really ever meant to just be like the whispery in the background, 1990. And then they had him scream in the next game. So that was, I tried my best to find where that would be. Like, how do you scream with, you know, and it has to be like a real scream, or else the immersion is broken. So it was tough for that scream. Funtime Freddy, I was a lot younger when I made that voice. A lot more durable. And now I've I've transitioned it farther and farther away from the signature gravel that he has, back to something a bit smoother, but he still has that wacky, all over the place energy. I swear my face is asleep by the time I'm done with some of these sessions, because all the blood is going to my extremities. So those two are quite challenging. Sun for the energy at some points, but with Help Wanted 2, we just made him a lot sassier, and that was an easier place for me. But he's still that bright sun, yeah.
So, when you were growing up and you're getting into this business, was this something you always kind of did when you were younger, like a lot of different voices? And was that something you like enjoyed? And how did you kind of get into where you're at now?
Yeah, well, I have to thank my parents so much, not only for putting up with me, I was a tough child to raise, but for always supporting me, whatever I wanted to do, and only wanting to lift me up and raise me right, and for me to be happy. At first I wanted to be an author, because I liked telling stories. That's where it all came from. I liked telling stories. And that was going to be the plan for a while. I had my whole future planned out at one point. And then I got into my third grade play in elementary school, which was like, whoa, this is interesting. And then I booked the lead in my 5th grade musical, and suddenly everybody was coming up to me, all the parents were like, you've got a future in this, like that. And I'm like, so that sort of sparked the acting spark in me. When I was 13, this obscure site called YouTube, have you ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
It was starting to come to fruition a bit there, and I was in this sort of sect of animators. We would animate either on Adobe Flash or with this game Super Smash Brothers. That's what we called machinima back then, before somebody took the IP rights to the name. But we would voice act for each other's stuff, and that's that was the epiphany for me, was that's where the two worlds meet, my wanting to tell stories and my acting bug. I love being a part of other people's stories and helping them bring it into real life as well. Trying to help them realize the vision. So that around that time, 13 is when I started cutting my teeth on it. And then my parents started enrolling me in courses for it, and it only just increased and increased from there until I booked. Funtime Freddy was my first big role. It was my first mainstream role, I would say. And so to still be with FNAF 8 years? No, 16 years later. No, but to voice acting 16 years later, 8 years later for FNAF. This is wild.
So what is the recording process like for you when going into these sessions? How long does it usually take, or what do your days usually look like?
Sure. For video games specifically,
Yes.
For a vocally stressful session, usually the standard is to only let it go for 2 hours, and then we can finish everything another day, just so you don't blow yourself out, because everybody just wants to bring the best product to it, and that's not going to happen if I'm blown out. As contractors and experts of our work, we sort of dictate really how long it goes, but 4 hours is the max usually for a video game session, but it all depends on how much content there is to record. For this one, we finished it in 2 hours anyway. It was a little vocally stressful, just going through all of the dying and screaming and getting set on fire and getting electrocuted, that stuff. It was a little all over the place, but we got through that in 2 hours. I'm usually on my own. I love it when I get to go to another studio, because then I get to see people, but I also love it when I get to record from my own home booth, which is much easier now with the advent of remote working. It all depends on if the client likes the sound of the booth. And I'll connect over Zoom or Source Connect or whatever to the client over there, and they'll direct me through the Excel sheet that we both have, and we do our best to make it a fun collaborative process for each one of them, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love what I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.